Welcome back. This is Wisconsin Shoe Guy, and today we're going to do a shoe battle with two shoes. This is going to be the Alfred Sargent Moore versus the Trickers Belgrave. So very, very similar shoes in obviously very different colors, but some really interesting things to compare, and let's get started. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Wisconsin Shoe Guy, and our channel we talk about men's dress wear. It's all about footwear, and we talk about unboxing videos, general shoe knowledge, helping you understand the industry and what's happening with your shoes. We look at shoes critically to determine whether or not they're worth the price that they charge. We compare shoe to shoe to understand which one is the best of the same category, and then I interview experts in the field to get their take as well. Check out my playlists to see all my videos. Welcome back. This is Wisconsin Shoe Guy, and today we're going to look at the Alfred Sargent Adelaide and talk a little bit about how it compares to some others. I'm going to actually break this into different videos as I do it, but I'm going to be doing them in a row. One of my watchers actually suggested that I have a categorization where I look at the last and I look at some of the structural things like the sole and things like that separately. Then I look at the quantitative measurements. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that for each of these. So I'm just going to repeat this piece in each of the videos as I compare this shoe to several others. So with that said, here we go. So the Alfred Sargent Moore is an Adelaide. It is a cap toe Adelaide. So Adelaides can come with a cap toe or it can come with a medallion toe. I've never seen them with a plain toe, but I'm sure that that's possible as well. They have heel counters usually, although that is also an option. So like there's an Edmonds Adelaide called the Cornwallis that does not have heel counters. And actually has a medallion, right? But no cap. So there's a lot of different options that you can do. As we look at this particular one, we are going to look at the last first. Now the last is a very important part of the shoe, right? It is the overall shape and is going to give you the overall impression of the shoe when it's on the ground. This is especially important for hole cuts because hole cuts have very little adornment, right? They're just a plain piece of leather. And so the last is going to be what overall is the shape of the shoe. Well, that's true on a cap toe Oxford as well. The cap toe Oxford has a cap, but the vamp here really gets its structure and shape from the last. And so you can have a hole cut shoe or a cap toe Oxford shoe that can look like a clog, or you can have one that looks like a very sleek piece of footwear. So it's important to note. So as we look at the last here, this is a good sweeping last. It has a nice line as it comes back toward the heel. Okay, so the way that it gradually goes back is really good. It has plenty of room here for your foot. So I have a relatively wide foot, and I actually sized down for this in order to be able to get it. So the ball is a little bit on the tight side, but the rest of the shoe, the volume at the front is really, really good for my foot. A little bit of pinching here on my pinky toe, which I may have to put a shoe stretcher in order to accommodate, but so far so good. The heel is nice and tight, so you get that nice splush when you put your foot in. You know, use a shoehorn, right? Everybody says that. I don't always, but what I do is I hold the back of it as I pull it onto my foot. And I do like to have the splush to make sure that my heel is secure, because nothing is worse than having the heel slide on your foot. If that happens, then you get blisters, and that sucks. So anyway, the other thing that I really like about lasts is the way the toe is like a chisel. Right? So this has this part here, it narrows, and then it has a relatively flat part here. Now it's not a square. Sometimes they'll call this a soft square, and there is a lot of variety when it comes to this in shoes. So as you look at this series of videos with the Alfred Sargent compared to the other one, you'll see that there are some that are more rounded than others, and some that are quite sharp. Now that is also true here, where it rises on the sides. So that can be a really big big change in the shoe. So as the last goes, right, you have the way the toe is, you have the sides, okay, and then you have the shape here, the sweeping part, okay, and then of course you have the heel and how well that fits to your foot. Okay. Now, some shoes are going to have a high instep last and some are going to have a low instep last. What does that mean? It means that the amount of leather here can vary. A lot of times what people want is they want a shoe that has very little in the way of a V-gap, okay, where this part just comes together very, very closely. And that can look really good, but a V-gap doesn't mean that the shoe doesn't fit you well. Sometimes if you have no V-gap up here, the shoe can be much too big. So it's a real catch-22, right? I prefer to have it with very little V-gap, but at the same time, if there's no V-gap and they come together, that's sometimes a sign that the shoe is too big. So something to keep in mind as you're looking at sizing and trying to keep it in. Now, the other piece, of course, is that leather does stretch, so you could have a V-gap on day one. I have a pair of CNES Adelaides that when I first got them, the V-gap was about 1.5 inches, and now it's down to almost 0. So again, it depends on the quality of the leather and how much they'll stretch. The higher end shoes stretch less, but they still stretch. It's leather, right? So something to consider. So anyway, so that's the last. So let's look at the sole. This is part of the Alfred Sargent exclusive range and has a really nice sole. It has a beveled waist, has a blind stitch sole. Now, this is also made with an oak bark tanned sole, so the leather is very, very long lasting. I have another pair of these that I've had for about a year, and the wear is about the same as this. So it just wears off the ink that you do when you wear it the first couple times, and then it will just last and last and last and last. This is now, like if you look at a JR sole, that's a double oak bark tanned, and that will last longer, but this is also much better than, you know, some of your chrome tan soles or something like that is available on some other shoes. Now, how long should a sole last? This is a really, really hard question to answer because soles are really dependent on the way you walk. It's your the surface that you're walking on. It's your weight, the way you walk. Sometimes people have they walk like this. Okay, and so you can wear down the sole here, and it doesn't really matter where you wear the sole down first. Once the sole is worn down in one particular area, it's time to replace it. You know, you can't replace part of the sole. I know some people have done things where they replace only the front half and so forth, and you can do that, and it saves some money, but it really doesn't lengthen the length of the sole because you do want to make sure that you're using the same stitch holes on the welt. Otherwise you have to replace the welt, and when you replace the welt, that actually diminishes the life of the sole a lot, which is another reason that a lot of people prefer to go to a cobbler instead of sending their shoes to the factory, because the factories have to put so many shoes through the rotation that they'll actually remove the welts and put new welts on because it's actually faster for them. So something to consider. So like when I used to send my shoes to Allen Edmonds to have them recrafted, and it's a fine practice, right? But the shoes can only be recrafted 3 times, and then after that, and I've actually had it where on the second time they were too tight, and it was because the new welt went on and it was just a little bit tighter. So food for thought. But anyway, this is the Alfred Sargent. That is the last. That is the sole. You can see the heel here has this beautiful split here with a lot of leather and a little bit of rubber. That actually helps it wear down slower, which is all about extending the life of the shoe. So that is the Alfred Sargent. Okay, so this is the Trickers Belgrave, and this also has a slight chisel to the last. It is a little bit more rounded than the Alfred Sargent, but it also has that nice chisel space to it. It has really nice rises, okay, on the last here. So it has this kind of a cool ledge look on it that is definitely something that I prefer. You'll see that has on both shoes, although the toe on this is significantly smaller. Now it seems like a bulkier shoe, right? It's just a little bit higher, has a bit more volume. The top line on this one is higher as well. So if you look there, you can see how much it sticks out above that. So that's something that can impact comfort depending on who you are and how you like to wear your shoes. That can rub on the feet differently. You know, it has a beautiful round heel cap. The heel cap on this is also very long comparatively. Right, so that's a difference in the way it looks, but it's as are the heels. Like the heel on this is very short, the heel on this one is very long, so that can be a big difference as well. And as we so as you look at it though, the last is it's a sweeping. It is a sweeping last, but it is bulkier this way. Okay, so there's like just more volume to it. And that can really change the look, right? So this just looks a little bit sleeker, you know, for being on the same foot, right? And that can be a challenge. When you go to the sole is also blind stitched, right? So you've got a nice amount of detail that's going on there. Now this has no bevel waist. The waist on the Alfred Sargent is also quite a bit narrower. You know, so that's a I like having a narrower waist. I feel like it cups my foot more, and so that's something that's interesting. Now, from a heel perspective, this actually has a dovetail heel, which looks really nice. I don't know that it actually adds a tremendous amount of function. Initially, of course, that would have been done in order to make the heel stay in there better, but given the amount of nails that they use normally, that can be a big difference. Now, one thing about the Trickers is that they don't use a lot of nails. Nor does Alfred Sargent. Alfred Sargent has 4 nails, which is about the least that I've seen. The Trickers does have a line of nails here, but I can't really see them that well because they've worn down. So that is part of the fun of wearing shoes and looking at them on videos repeatedly, is that your ability to see that changes. So I'll go back and I'll look at that when I edit. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the finishing on these shoes. So we're going to start with the Alfred Sargent. And I think that the Alfred Sargent has a good amount of finishing, but some of it is left intentionally plain. And so that's going to be part of what we're looking at today, is what is left intentionally plain, and what is not. So we're going to start with the pinking, right? And the pinking is the area along the cap, along the edge, along the top line. And I'm going to say that this pinking is relatively fine. I do find it helpful to actually measure the pinking, because sometimes that can help determine whether it's actually finer or not. And this is looking at like 3mm pinking, and it is consistent across the whole shoe. When it comes to fudging, and fudging is along the edge here on the top of the welt, when they take that wheel and they put in that really nice pattern, there is no fudging on the Alfred Sargent at all, not even on the inside. So it's just it's relatively straightforward. Now the sole edge itself, which is right here, okay, this has been finished. So it has a ridge at the top, and it has a ridge at the bottom. Okay, and you can feel that. And then when it comes to actually by the waist, where it's beveled, the sole has like a rounded edge along the edge there. So it's rounded here, or beveled, okay, and then it's ironed with the groove at the top and the bottom all the way around here. So it's like a 180 iron, and then the rest of that 270 is got that bevel shape to it. Now, the heel itself, somebody used a wheel and artistically did a little finishing piece on the edge there as well. As I stated earlier, the heel cap, or the heel counter, is actually in 2 pieces with a seam down the middle. There is stitching on either side of that seam instead of just having a plain seam, and of course there's the flap over the top as well, which is pretty common on these. The counter actually extends beyond the heel. These heels, as I said before, are actually really short, and usually they that centimeter where it is short is normally taken up by the heel actually going out there. So that's an interesting detail there. I think they wanted to make room for the bevel. That's just my opinion, but again, I'm not a shoemaker. I have no idea in terms of why they would do that, so that's just my assumption in looking at it. And of course, we said on the sole before, the sole is beautiful, has all this, you know, it has the bevel waist, and it has this, you know, blind stitch on there as well. When we look at extras, you know, there isn't a lot of hand stitching. When it comes to the skiving, and what skiving is when you put a toe cap on and, you know, they don't actually have the leather going all the way underneath, so the cap doesn't go over it. They're actually joining two pieces of leather here. What they do is they thin the leather so that this gap from the cap to the vamp is as thin as possible. And I'm going to say that they did not skive this extremely thin. When I look at some of my other shoes, which I'll look at in my in the different battles here, I know that is actually thinner. Now, in terms of actually measuring it, I can't tell whether that's actually a whole millimeter of thickness or not. I will tell you that it's thicker than my tape. Okay, so I'm gonna say it's more than a millimeter. And I'm going to use that as my judge, right? Is it thicker than the tape? Can I still feel the tape when I put the tape on top of it? And in this case, I do. So that's going to say I'm going to say that those edges are on the thick side, on the Alfred Sargent. In terms of other pieces, that's the last things we're going to measure are the density of the stitches. Okay, and this is just a very, very straightforward measurement. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5. 4.5 stitches per centimeter across the top here. I always measure at the cap toe on Adelaide's because it's always the same. And then when it comes to the sole, this is normally 3. For the sole, it is, I'm going to say 3.5, almost 4. Almost 4 stitches per centimeter on the sole. So that is the Alfred Sargent. So now we'll talk about finishing on the trickers. And what's interesting about the trickers is that they do have some really, really fine pinking. If I measure the pinking, which we talked about doing before, the pinking is about 2 millimeters. So it's really, really very fine. As it goes around, and this is on the U-throat, but it is not on the top line like it is on the others. It is so the Alfred Sargent has it on the top line, but not as fine everywhere else. It also has this little flap here at the joint, which basically just covers up the stitch that holds the facing together, and then has this as well. Now, what's interesting is that the cap actually extends a little bit beyond the heel, but not much. But it almost lines up exactly with before the brogue line. So obviously very intentional. The sole edge on this is perfectly smooth all the way around. It has been ironed and it has been smoothed and sanded down, but it doesn't have the little ridge at the top or at the bottom. And it doesn't have a bevel at the waist. So it's just perfectly smooth all the way around. It does have the ridge that's cut into the sole right below the welt at the heel. So going all the way around there. It is blind stitched, as we talked about before. Now from a skiving perspective, if I put my tape down and I do this, I can feel it, but I'm not sure if I just feel the pinking where the pinking sticks up a little bit. It is not as pronounced as it is on the Alfred Sargent. As I look at the Alfred Sargent and I do the same thing, okay, it catches my finger a little bit more. So it's very hard. You can't really see it, but you can definitely feel it. It's definitely not as smooth. So that is the tricker on the finishing. It's finished really nice, just in a very different way. Now, the one thing I will say about this is that it has fudging, really pronounced fudging, but the fudging starts up here and then goes down around to here. So from here to there. So that's different, and the fudging itself is interesting. It's a very deep fudging, and it's not on the edge. Sometimes they just do the sole edge. This actually goes all the way to the stitches and makes the stitches hard to see. So that's going to be interesting when we're trying to do the stitch density here. So let's start with the stitch density on the uppers. When we start with the uppers here, we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 stitches per centimeter on the upper. But now when we're actually looking at the sole, we've got to be able to look through the through the fudging. And I see 1, 2, 3. 3 stitches per centimeter on the sole, which is average, right? I mean, that is a good solid stitch density for any shoe. So nicely done there. So this begs the question, what is the better shoe? Is it the Loake with its lack of fudging, but a better finish on the outside, arguably cleaner last, although the other one is just a little bit bulkier? Is it the they both have this little over where the brogue line goes over the heel, although this on the outside goes over the heel quite a bit, right? Or does that is that what makes the difference between these two shoes? The soles are both finished. They're both blind stitched. They both have high quality leather. Okay. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that the leather quality on the Alfred Sargent feels just a scotch nicer. From a style perspective, I like the way that the laces have the tapering effect on the Alfred Sargent better. I think that the last just has a little bit more of an elegant look to it. This just comes across as a little bit too bulky. Now, you can, if you look at it objectively, you can see that there are some differences, but it's very minor. So I'm not sure whether or not that is just a function of the fact that this is a little bit of a heavier shoe and I'm sublimating as I look at it. But I think that is different. The Trickers has does have a cleaner a cleaner cut to the leather. So the skiving is a little bit better, and the clicking on the back is a little bit better. But for the rest of it, it's very close. It's very close. So for the purposes of this, I'm going to say pick out the color that you like and pick out the last design that you like the most. For me, the lacing really does it. And if I could only have one, that's what I would have chosen. But I really respect Trickers. I respect this shoe. And for Trickers, which is really known as a country shoe, this is so elegant. This is so town oriented. I mean, they call it one of their town shoes. This really does have a great degree of finishing for a country shoe company. Okay. But at the end of the day, I feel like the Alfred Sargent just fits the need a little bit better. So that is my thoughts, and take it or leave it. Let me know what you think in the comments.